Hello everyone and welcome to Polaron's live session. This week we are discussing business opportunities with Poland. As always, we are joined by our director, Eva Hussein, and our guest for this week, Zuzanna Kobrzynski, who is the Houston Bureau Chief at the Polish Investment and Trade Agency. If you would like to learn more about other Polish topics, subscribe to our Facebook page where we upload videos weekly. Over to you, Eva.
Thank you, Stephanie, and good job at trying to pronounce Zuzanna's name. And welcome to you, Zuzanna, from Melbourne. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm a little sweaty in Houston, Texas. As you know, Houston is always hot and my air conditioning went out. So if you see me sweating profusely, I apologize. And I'm just going to pronounce my last name, Kobrzynski, Stephanie, no shade. I know it's difficult, but I wanted to be helpful in this situation.
Excellent. Excellent. The Polish surnames are a challenge for many English speakers, of course. But today we're going to talk about pierogi and kiełbasa diplomacy, right?
Yes, yes. That's
tell us a bit more about what you do and how you got into this work.
Sure. So again, I'm the bureau chief of the Houston office for the Polish Investment and Trade Agency. We have 60 offices worldwide. We have 5 other offices in the United States: New York, Chicago, Washington, Texas, San Francisco, and LA. And our mission is very simple. It's straightforward. We have 2 main goalposts that we try to meet. One is to help Polish companies expand and grow in the United States. And the other is to encourage the flow of FDI into Poland. And what I mean by FDI is investment by American companies in Poland. So whether that's opening up an office, a manufacturing facility, it's all sorts of things, but it's an American company investing in Poland. And right now, currently, we have around 1,500 American companies in Poland that have invested in Polish companies. In the United States, we have over 30 Polish companies that have chosen to relocate here. Or not relocate, but to open up offices. I was telling Stephanie while we were chatting, you know, when you think of Polonia in the United States, you think of Chicago or New York. And, you know, people are like, why open up an office in Houston, Texas? Well, you know, obviously the energy industry is a huge player in Houston. The medical center, we have the world's largest medical center. There's all sorts of technology happening, innovation. Austin is almost replacing Silicon Valley as America's tech hub. There's so many companies relocating from Silicon Valley to Austin. So there are so many opportunities for Polish companies, especially when you think of innovation, as Poland has become Europe's tech hub in terms of partnership. So that's, you know, one of the reasons that they opened up an office in Houston.
And Zuzanna, when you were talking to us earlier, you did say you talked about your love of Poland, and then somebody suggested you should get a job if you love it so much. But it's true that you're one of the greatest advocates of Poland as a business opportunity, I guess, is the way to put it. What is it about Poland that's good?
Well, so I'll just step back for a second, how I ended up in this role and why I ended up in this role. You know, my parents immigrated to the United States. I was the firstborn. I grew up with Polish as my first language. I spent many summers in Poland. I went to summer camp in Poland. You know, when I'm in Poland, I feel very American, but when I'm in America, I feel very Polish, if that makes sense. I spent a gap year between high school and college. And then as an adult, I went back to Poland and I lived and worked there. I worked for the American Chamber of Commerce in Warsaw. I started a foundation that taught girls to code. I was immersed in that innovation sector. And I came back to the United States and I moved to Austin, Texas. And Austin being the innovation hub, you know, I tried to plug into that innovation community. And, you know, I would talk about Poland and, you know, the innovation coming out of Poland, the talent of our developers. Poland has almost over 400,000.
Staggering number.
When you look at comparable to other countries in the CEE, Romania comes in second with something like 150. But not only do we have so many developers, but the talent. HackerRank ranks Polish developers between first and third every year in terms of talent. In terms of JavaScript, they're ranked number one. Again, it's the talent, not only the sheer numbers, but the talent and the ingenuity. I always say that innovation is in the DNA of Poles. And I think because we've had to innovate because of our history, right? I mean, yeah. You always have to, you were always moving, you were always trying to figure out what's happening next. And innovation is in our DNA. And I think that's what makes it such a hotspot for foreign investment. Poland is the third largest recipient of FDI behind the United States and China. Even this year alone, last year with the pandemic, you would think that foreign investment in Poland, would have kind of stalled. We had a record year. We had 220 projects to come through our agency for foreign investment, which is 5 more than in 2019. This year, we're already at 30 investments. So, that talent is being recognized. Also, Poland is in the center of Europe. It really is the heart of Europe, but that central location, access to the ports, the infrastructure, the number of airports, makes it just a very attractive place for investment. Human capital in terms of, Poles and education, 92% of Poles have secondary education. In terms of English language capability, I think they rank between 11th and 14th place, right? It's just really a place where you have a lot of talent who are capable, who are hardworking, and who are willing, to try new things and explore and pivot, right? So I think that's why it's such an attractive place.
Right. And I think, the place that your parents left behind is, of course, no longer there. So I sometimes speak to people whose ancestors, come from Poland and who have this, kind of black and white, if not gray image of Poland.
Polar bears or, horse-drawn carriages.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But of course, you've traveled to Poland many times as a child and as an adult, and it's a really a different place. If no one's, people haven't been, they should go, and that's the time that you make up your mind about the country when you see it firsthand. But it sounds like you have a pretty busy job. What can people come to you for? What sort of advice or guidance do you provide?
So for our Polish companies, we offer a number of services. We are their boots on the ground, right? We are embedded in the business communities in our areas, and we're their boots on the ground. So whether that's business intelligence, whether it's helping find partnerships, distributors, in terms of, we can't offer legal advice in terms of if you're interested in opening up a US entity, but we can connect you to the right people. We can give you advice on trade shows. For example, if you're a food producer and you're looking to enter the US market, we can help you. We help with research reports about market interest, all of those things. For an American company, our local offices are the first point of contact. In terms of finding out how to invest in Poland, what are your opportunities? We have I think it's a staff of over 30 people. We have a Center for Strategic Investment, and we connect you with them, and then they connect you with local partners. Our network is throughout the country. It's very extensive, and they'll tell you about local incentives. They'll help you site select. It's really a one-stop shop.
And I think you have mentioned some of the numbers that are, to me anyway, who goes to Poland regularly, that were staggering, very interesting. But what are some of your success stories? Can you think of an example of either an American company or a Polish company that really succeeded? What do they call them? Unicorns or whatever it is that we know others call them?
So we have, in terms of startups, there are probably 3 major startups from Poland that have achieved unicorn status. There's Booksy, which is a scheduling app. I used it extensively in Poland. I use it in the United States. If you're looking to book an appointment with a hairdresser, a spa, nail salon, it's wonderful. There's Airly, which came out of Krakow, and they produce air sensors in terms of air pollution, right? Which is really amazing. Brainly, which is another Polish startup, there's going to be four. Sorry, I'm going to mention one more. But Brainly, which really shot through the roof during the pandemic. They help. It's a forum for classroom help for students from around the world that help each other with classroom assignments. And then, of course, there's CD Projekt Red, which developed the game Witcher, right? And the TV series spun off from that. Cyberpunk came out. There were some people that weren't very happy with it, but still, it's one of our success stories.
Yeah.
And in terms of game development, Poland is really, I think it's, don't quote me on this exact number, but I believe it's number 7 in the world in terms of exporting games. Half of Poles consider themselves gamers. And I saw this when I would come over as a child. Obviously I'm a little older, so I'm not Generation Z, but I had my Commodore 64, and I would go to Poland, and this was a country when I was going as even a teenager, it was still suffering the effects of communism, right? There were shortages. I remember going into stores, buying things on ration cards and stuff like that. But my friends that I would visit had computers. And not only were they playing games, but they were interested in what's happening in the computer, and they were taking it apart. So I'm not surprised that half of Poles, identify as gamers, right? So I think that's one of the reasons that the game industry is so strong. It was a connection to the West that was very accessible.
Mm-hmm. And look, during our chat ahead of this session, we were talking about Poland as a brand, and we both agreed that more could be done in this space, so that we not just know for pierogi and kielbasa, but the stuff that you talked about. And we were both kind of wishfully thinking that some creative agency comes up with a concept that like there's so many countries, like Estonia, for example, is known for digital citizenship, I guess that is the way to put it. What is Poland known for, other than what you've said? I mean, we know that there's lots of interest there in agriculture and organic food. What are some of the other things that people don't know about Poland but should?
Well, also Poland is the #1 exporter of electric buses, for example, right? Furniture is a huge export. Automotive parts, aviation. We have an aviation valley that's well known around the world, right? So there are a number of wonderful high-tech innovations coming out of Poland. But yeah, I mean, there is that problem of branding, obviously. And one of our roles, obviously, I guess it's not part of our official mission, right? But it is also educating the public about what's happening with Poland and being those ambassadors for these Polish companies. Mm-hmm. We joked about, the pierogi and kielbasa diplomacy, right? Growing up in the United States, and I grew up on the East Coast in New Jersey, where I was born, Italian Americans are very proud of their food, right? Mm-hmm. They talk extensively about it. It's part of the culture, right? I know good pizza because I grew up in New Jersey, right? But it's a part of their culture, and I don't think that's something we should shy away from. We should be proud of our cuisine, and talk about it and use it in people. I think into the way of a lot of hearts and minds of people is through cuisine. So I think there is a role for it, but it's also coupling that with fighting that stereotype of that we do encounter, right? Of Poland being behind the times. It's a gray country. It's Stalinist design. I mean, right now, if you dropped an American off into the center of Warsaw or Gdańsk or Wrocław, you could be in the West Village, in terms of, the restaurants, the stores. There isn't that culture shock that I experienced, right? As a kid going over that. If, I wore a certain style of clothes, you could pick me out as an American, right? So
yeah, because we had so very little growing up, and people still made do. And I think what you spoke of just earlier about innovation, it is just a result of not having things and having to innovate in a way that we wouldn't think that's called innovation.
But you would innovate your daily life was tasked with innovating, right? Not to kind of press on about that stereotype of Poland of being as a poor country, because it's reached developed nation status. It has a huge consumer base in terms of wealth. But if you went to the store in the morning, and I remember doing this with my grandmother, and there wasn't any bread, the bread was sold out, you had to figure out how to get bread, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a part of our history, I think, that we should be proud of, right? That we overcame this through ingenuity, through innovation. I think that's why it's part of our DNA.
When I was growing up, Zuzanna, we had a special word for this innovation. It's called kombinator.
Kombinować.
That's it. So for people that don't know what that means, it means being, slightly dodgy, but you just had to make do. You just have to find your own solutions.
Yep. I know that word well.
Right. And in terms of your agency, because we do have, people might be wondering why we're talking to you. You're all the way in America, we're all the way here in Australia, but the agency that you represent has got global offices all over the world, including Sydney. And we have a pretty close relationship with Jakub, who heads the agency. But tell us a bit more about the agency's role and how has it been rolled out? Because it's only been around for a few years, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, there have been different iterations of the agency ever since the transformation, right? Ever since some investors started, coming around in 89 and 90. So there's always been an agency, but it's been through different names, different ministries. But like most, I think most countries have these sorts of agencies, right? To promote export, to promote the inflow of investment dollars. And I'm very proud. I mean, it's been a couple of years, but again, over 60 offices worldwide. We've got a really crackerjack staff. The past couple of years, we've organized a business forum for Polish companies to come and hear what we are about at the National Stadium in Warsaw. And over, I believe, like 5,000 businesses showed up to learn more about what we do. There's a hunger, I think, with Polish producers to export. They no longer think of exporting as just to Germany. They know that the goods that they're producing are of high quality, competitive prices, and they're looking for other markets, right?
And they want to diversify. And Zuzanna, you knew this question was coming. What's happening during COVID? How are we pivoting, or whatever the newest word is that we?
Yeah, pivot. I love that we have, I was speaking with Stephanie, and obviously, I would say the second and third quarters of 2020 were slow in the sense that no one knew what was happening, right? We were all trying to figure out what's next. However, we had so many companies, Polish companies, contacting us because they pivoted. They were, say, perfume makers, right? They started making hand sanitizer. We have one company that I love working with. They're Cedia. They're called Cedia. They work with, they produce solar powered park benches, bus stop shelters. They pivoted and started making solar powered hand sanitizers that, you didn't have to press. So it was slow, but it wasn't slow. Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah.
We had these companies, again, hand sanitizers, gowns, masks, producing all of this stuff. So we're trying to scramble and figure out what the regulations are. Where can we get this, or sourcing material? So, it was slow, but it was busy. But then in that third and fourth quarter, things really picked up back to normal in terms of your regular export questions, right? And there were gaps in the supply chain that we were trying to fill, whether it was the lack of meat. I don't know how it was in Australia, but in the United States, we had some months where, meat wasn't being, there were certain cuts of meat that you couldn't find in the grocery stores because, COVID had spread in the meat processing plants, or and things were shut down. So we were really, really pivoting and trying to plug in that supply chain. And just as the Polish economy didn't suffer that greatly during COVID in 2020, right? There was only like a 3% shrinkage in GDP. Our office in Texas, again, where we don't have that Polonia to support us, right? That institutional Polonia business to help us find partners and to help network. Our office is the busiest office in the United States.
Amazing.
I think that also has to do with, in terms of Texas being a very popular state for businesses to relocate, not only because of its location, kind of as in the center of the United States, just like Poland is the center of Europe, but in terms of tax incentives and taxes and in terms of regulations, it's a very business-friendly state. And this year, again, we're, the busiest office from our cohort in the United States. And this year alone, we've had three Polish companies looking for or taking the steps to register their businesses in the US.
And we have
served over 50 Polish companies so far.
So a lot of work. So, but we're halfway through 2021. What's next for the latter part of the year? Will you be, for example, traveling to Poland, or are we just all staying put and waiting again and still to see what happens? What are you seeing?
So I think what's happening is that everyone is expecting in the United States life to get back to normal in the fall.
Okay.
And trade shows are such a vital place to create new business contacts, to create networks, to find distributors, to find partners. They were moved online. Obviously, that's not the same thing. So we're looking at trade shows reopening, perhaps in the fall, but definitely in 2020. When you're creating a trade show where you have 30,000 attendees come, you can't just okay, they lifted the mask mandates. Okay, so we'll do it in a month, right? So we're looking at trade shows happening again. We're looking at business travel. It's also very important. I was on a call today with a Polish company. All day we had calls with different economic development agencies, and they really want to come to the United States and look at sites. Site selection is a very important process in deciding to open up a division in the United States, and they can't do it yet because of the restriction. But again, we're hearing, word that, again, in the fall, restrictions will be lifted and travel will happen again.
Right, Zuzanna, I wanted to ask you about something that we mentioned sort of briefly earlier, but it is about people speaking English in Poland.
Right.
And I think that was one of the surprises for you, well, maybe not surprises, but an interesting factor where a lot of people do speak English when you come, and especially bigger city. But in terms of language learning, it's a priority for Poles. Yeah,
it is. So in the late 90s, I did a gap year, and yeah, English was not a largely spoken language. 5 years ago, I went back and when I worked in Poland with the hope, one of my goals was to improve my Polish, given that, when you speak it at home, it's a different language than when you speak it, sometimes I sound like, I'm a 50-year-old person. I still use, words that my parents used 50 years ago that are out of fashion, right? So in terms of learning contemporary Polish, in terms of learning that business language, that was one of my goals. However, I spoke English the whole time, right? Especially being immersed in the tech community. I worked for the American Chamber of Commerce in Warsaw. English was the primary language that we used to communicate. So, there's especially, and two, with, when you're looking at the millennial generation, the Generation Z generation, there's English is the most popular, I think, foreign language taught in schools, right?
Right. And I think what you mentioned about the Polish spirit, and geopolitically, we are between a few countries that were I guess very keen to have a slice of us. For 123 years, Poland didn't exist on the map, and then after the war, we were absorbed, not officially, but into USSR. So I think we're still somewhat recovering from it in our spirit, in a way, but I think we've moved on so much that if anyone hasn't been to Poland, as soon as the borders open, go and have a look for yourself, because you'll be surprised. as to what a vibrant and modern and exciting place it is. And, you know, I always say to people that ask me, you know, don't believe everything you read in the news, essentially, you know, look behind the headlines
Right.
and go and see for yourself, because there's much that Poland has to offer. Zuzanna, we have about 5 minutes for questions. So I'm just going to hand over to Stephanie to see what people want to know from our wonderful guest this morning.
Yeah, I just, before we do that, I just picking up, you know, Poland, when you think of Poland, you don't think of it as a tourist destination. But I mean, when you think of it, you have the mountains, you have the Baltic Sea, you have the lakes region. I've had incredible cuisine in Poland, not just Polish cuisine, but, you know, Italian cuisine, Vietnamese. There's a huge Vietnamese community, for example, in Warsaw. French cuisine. I mean, it's a destination place as a vacation place too. And I think that's something we need to promote and keep in mind. For sure.
I so agree with you, and certainly it's very well priced. And you know, things like hotels. When you go to a 4-star hotel, it's a 4-star hotel, right?
Yeah.
You know, when I go to London, a 4-star hotel isn't a 4-star hotel. So there's a lot of lots of really, really good things in terms of tourism and lots of diversity of nature, and also lots of cities to visit. So I certainly encourage
castles, beautiful
yes.
castles, right? But yeah, like you said, nature, you have the mountains, you have, you know, you have lakes, you have the sea. I mean, it's really just a wonderful place. And Poles are they're known for their hospitality, and you'll see that, you know, and helpfulness. I mean, coming from the East Coast, you know
what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. There's a very, you know, and I think one of the cultural challenges that I tell Americans about when they're visiting, especially if they're from Texas. Texans are very friendly. You will have a 5-minute conversation with someone at the checkout at the grocery store. And, you know, in Poland, you know, smiling, that customer, right? It's a very curt, like in most European countries, it's not just Poland, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to have that customer service in Paris, and you won't have it in Warsaw. But Poles are very helpful. They're very hospitable, and you'll meet some wonderful people if you go over, for sure.
And they're very curious as well. And I think there's like a genuine curiosity about people,
It is.
where they've come from, and you know, what they're up to. Stephanie, we're probably going to have time for one question, so go for it.
Too easy. Thanks so much for this session. It's not only taught me a lot about Polish business, but now I really want to go traveling again. Sometime soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
So Zuzanna, you're clearly very invested in what you do, but what do you love most about your role?
That I get to work with Polish innovators. I mean, that's, again, as I mentioned, you know, when I moved to Texas, you know, someone told me you should just get a job promoting Poland, and I get to do that. I've always been a proponent of Poland. I've always talked about what's happening there. I was always very proud of who I am, and now I get to help people achieve their American dream, right? For Polish companies. So it's a win-win situation.
Zuzanna, I have a question for you from somebody. They want to know if you get to test any cosmetics.
Do we get to test any cosmetics? We do get samples, but I pass them on to clients in the United States. So, but I'm a huge fan. You know, when I go to Poland, I come back with a suitcase full of things. And in my role, I'm hoping to minimize that overstuff of my suitcase and overweight baggage fees that I have to pay by helping these cosmetic companies get into US retailers.
Because there are so many really good cosmetic brands, actually, and like you, I you know, when I can travel, I do all my purchases over there, because they a lot of creams they're just beautiful. All right, Stephanie, one more question.
Sure, thank you. Sorry, I've just got my questions list here.
Otherwise, that's right. Otherwise, I had one.
Sure, if you've got one.
Yeah, I do. So, Zuzanna, in terms of what's going to happen, say, within the next 2 to 3 years, I think the question is, what are you seeing? What should people prepare? What should they be thinking about in terms of Poland-US trade relationship?
Mhm. Well, the United States is one of the top 10 trading partners for Poland. It's the largest investor in Poland. It's been the number one investor for the past couple of years. But this year, because of what was happening in Belarus, our agency, I'm very proud of this program. They developed a business harbor program, which helped Belarusian businesses invest and relocate to Poland, right? But like I said, but in previous years, the United States has been the number one investor in Poland, and we can see we can continue to see that trend, right? Poland did not suffer greatly with their GDP during the coronavirus pandemic, right? GDP growth is supposed to rebound at 3% this year in Poland. And I can just see that relationship continuing to grow. And because of our offices and because of the work we do, hopefully it'll mean that there'll be more Polish products on the shelves, and more Polish companies opening up divisions in the US.
Zuzanna, there's no better advocate for Poland and Polish American business relationships. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
We've run out of time, of course, as we always do, but I have learned a lot. Stephanie has learned a lot, and hopefully everybody that's watched has learned a lot. And I personally want to come and visit Texas. I've never been, and I think until you visit Texas, you don't understand America, right? So, whenever we can travel, we'll be there. And I warmly also invite people that can, when they can, to go and visit Poland and see for themselves what it's like.
Absolutely. You're always welcome, and I'll take you. There's an area of Texas that it's one of the first settlements of Polish immigrants in the United States. And there are folks there who still speak Polish. This is going over 6 generations back. So it's an interesting trip.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing place. And I think it once again goes to show that you should look behind the headlines. You should look into what's going on in the ground. And I am sincerely hoping that soon, whatever the new normal is going to be, we're going to be back to it. So once again, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you in person, or maybe you come and visit Australia. You've never been, right?
No, it's been a dream of mine. So
okay, well,
you might regret extending that invitation.
No. We might need to set up Zuzanna Eva exchange program, but we'll see how. But thank you so much, and we'll see everybody soon.
Yep, absolutely. See you soon.
Thanks, Zuzanna.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.